Hi everyone, welcome to this panel discussion. I have with me Mr. Mayank Jain, as well as Mr. Amit Bhatt, Mr. Seshu Thotakura, Parveen Yadav, and thanks Manish for giving me the opportunity to moderate this session. This excites me a lot because this is where certain liking for us as charging infra play comes, wherein the government trying to aid or trying to give us faster adoption of electric vehicles through EV infra. So if Mr. Amit Bhatt, it would be great if you can introduce yourself.
Thanks, Dhiman. My name is Amit Bhatt. I'm the Executive Director for Transport at WRI India.
Thanks, Amit. Mr. Seshu, if you could introduce yourself.
Sure. Hi, everyone. This is Seshu Thotakura. I'm the founder of Smart Charge EV. We are a startup focusing on highway and destination-focused EV infrastructure pan-India.
Thank you, Mr. Thotakura. Mr. Mayank Jain, if you could introduce yourself.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Dhiman. Sorry, Dhiman, right? Yeah. So, basically, I'm the co-founder and CEO of EFIL Electric. And at EFIL, we are building a strong EV ecosystem wherein we are supporting the ecosystem through our charging solutions, which includes the DC and AC chargers. And also, we are working on the EV space in terms of the electric mobility. We have developed the three-wheelers, electric three-wheelers. And a segment of three-wheelers has been already ICAT approved and FAME 2 under FAME 2 category. And further, we are working on L5 category vehicles, which would be soon launched, maybe mid of this year itself. So yeah, that's a brief about EFIL.
Thanks, Mayank. Thank you. Mr. Gaurav Mandora, if you could introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I'm Gaurav Mandora from M-Glades E-Power Private Limited. We are providing charging solutions for the electric vehicles, and mostly we are focusing on DC chargers. And our main focus is to capture the market of the highway, societies, and builders. So these are the possible criteria where the customers are spend the maximum time and they can utilize their time to spend the charging station. Thank you.
Thank you, Gaurav. Mr. Parveen Yadav, if you could introduce yourself. Mr. Yadav, you're mute and your video is also off. If you could turn that on for us. Okay. Mr. Apte, if you could remotely connect with Mr. Yadav and see if there is an issue. Till that time, I'll introduce myself. I'm Dhiman. I'm the co-founder and chief marketing officer for GoEgo Network. We manufacture our hardware in India, in Aurangabad, as well as we are one of the largest networks of AC chargers in Pune and Maharashtra, wherein we have more than 100 plus installations. I will be moderating this session, and let's just dive right into it. As soon as Mr. Yadav comes back on, we can maybe get that introduction. So my first question will go to Mr. Amit Bhatt, wherein we had this conversation, and I saw that there is a big push from the government wherein there was a discussion around financing the EV infra for decarbonizing transport. Can you maybe get into the details so that we understand?
Thanks a lot, Dhiman. So I think if you look at, so based on what was discussed at COP26, one of the key issues that has come out is that if we want to decarbonize our development from the climate change perspective, we cannot do that unless we decarbonize transport. And the reason is pretty simple, right? If you look at in India also, so while globally transport accounts for 50% of all global greenhouse gas emission, In India, that number may be slightly lower at 7.5% right now. But the worst part is that these transport emissions are the fastest growing sectors in India. So we have an opportunity to reduce this emission. And we cannot have sustainable development if we are not able to decarbonize transport. Now, if that is being said, the question is, how does one go about decarbonizing transport? And then there are many issues surrounding decarbonizing transport. But what is important is that within the transport-related emission, 90% of the emission come from road transport sector. So if you are really looking at decarbonizing transport, we have to decarbonize road transport, and that is the priority sector. Now, one of the big issues with decarbonizing road transport is, where is the money? Where is the money to bring in clean technology? Where is the money to kind of deploy clean technology, and that to deploy at scale? So we had an interesting workshop a couple of days back with Niti Aayog, where we talked about what are the ways and means to kind of achieve this decarbonizing transport. And the key takeaway was that we have to create some kind of financial incentives, some kind of, we have to bring some money into the sector. Only then we can see some kind of green recovery happening. And within that sector, I think electric mobility was identified as one of the key sectors, especially if you're looking at the urban and peri-urban environment. And therefore, there are two things to it. One, how can you develop robust charging infrastructure? And can you look at some of the innovative financing mechanism to develop charging infrastructure? So that was one. Second was, how can you also decrease the lending rates which are currently prevalent in the EV industry? So while the cars may get as a very competitive lending rates, but look at two-wheeler and look at three-wheeler, that segment is drawing almost 2 and 2.5 times interest rate as compared to internal combustion engine. So there was discussion of bringing some kind of schemes which can facilitate some kind of first loss guarantee scheme, so that banks feel comfortable that in case there is some backing, in case the loan goes bad. So there's a lot of interesting discussion which are happening in terms of both from the supply side as well as the demand side, bringing in money to accelerate the EV adoption in India.
Yeah, I think it's exciting times for us, wherein one of the major problems which we see is financing, even on the infra side, where the OPEX plays are very, very prevalent. And then it seems that the deeper the pockets, the more market grab they can get. Taking this question forward to Mr. Thotakura, what do you think will be the solution to this kind of a, whether it will be a shared infra kind of a play, whether it will be community charge parks? What is it that you see is going to be?
I think we are talking about multiple solutions here, given the magnitude of infrastructure that is expected to be required in India. To draw a simple contrast between the current refueling infrastructure in India, which is about 70,000 odd petrol pumps, we are talking about at least 10-fold or even 50-fold number of charging points that are required in India over the next, say, 10 to 20 years. How do we get there? Is it possible for few companies, like we have like 4 to 5 oil companies today, which are managing the 70,000 infrastructure? I don't think it is practical when we are talking about a volume that is 10 times that, or even 50 times that. I see a combination of these solutions. We need those public charging points which are at scale, big setups where people can stop on the go and charge. But as I was telling in our introduction, it has to be combined with experience, what people have there, to spend that 45 minutes average with a quality experience. What do they have? What do they enjoy? The closest example I can think of is an airport where we wait after security before boarding, right? What do we experience there? Our basic needs are taken care, starting from toilets to food to a safe and convenient and weatherproof area to sit, or if somebody can spend a little more or have a membership to a launch, they can enjoy that. That's the similar experience we need to bring to public charging infrastructure. And we're talking about people looking forward to go there in the first place. Otherwise, if we continue to offer only those what we have today, like under a metro station or on a footpath on the roadside, that's not the infrastructure people look forward to use and spend their 45 minutes or 1 hour of time while charging their. Two, whether coming to urban congestion and lack of parking spaces or personal parking spaces for a lot of people who have cars or two-wheelers, where a lot of those vehicles are left on the road outside their homes. How do we solve that? Is by innovatively coming up with business models which integrate park and charge kind of an infrastructure where people don't have to worry about charging as well as safety of their vehicle. Safety is an important factor we need to keep in mind. When the vehicle or an asset is being left in a public place away from their home, probably for them to safely leave it there and expect the vehicle to be taken care and charged there by the time they want to use it the next morning. That's something that doesn't extensively exist in India, but I think that's a scope for business model innovation in creating that opportunity in a lot of residential and commercial places across the country. Third is public participation. Another comparison I would like to bring forward is, in 2006, India had 42 lakh PCOs, public call offices or STD booths. Those happened, that infrastructure is so widespread and is almost every few feet we walk on any street, we found those PCOs or even coin boxes. Most of that was co-integrated into some other businesses, a medical shop or a hotel or a pan dabba. A lot of people saw that as an additional revenue stream where they could integrate that into their existing business and add it to their business, so that the investment is coming from those individuals or businesses who are already set up everywhere in the country. But the access to the much needed infrastructure is prevalent and available to public because of that public participation. Talking about 30 lakh or 50 lakh charging points that India would need over the next 10 to 15 or 20 years, I only see that is possible when public participate, see this as a viable and practical investment and a revenue stream. It could be looked at in silo, or it could be integrated into their existing businesses, like a supermarket can add it into their parking, a medical shop can add it into their parking. When it comes to two-wheeler, three-wheeler charging, it's much less space demanding, but it can be much extensively, cost effectively expanded with public participation. How do we get there? Is by making this a very practical infrastructure which could be built everywhere by everyone, of course keeping in the safety and other standards in mind.
Thanks, Seshu. Keeping that thematic going and how public participation can help, and public as such will be a part of this entire ecosystem where adoption of electric vehicles majorly happens when you overcome the fear of range anxiety. Taking out the fear of range anxiety, Mr. Gaurav Mandora, as he said in his introduction, that they have a focus on highways. So I would like Mr. Mandora to come in here and actually explain to us what are the different business models he sees behind this, as well as how they are moving ahead and capturing the highways.
Thank you, Dhiman. Actually, we are more focusing on the highway because everyone is charging at their home. So just a simple layman language, I can tell you, once you go from point A to point B and the distance is far away from 200 kilometers, so you don't have a time point, you don't want to wait 8 to 10 hours to charge. So the best place where the customer is spending their time of nearby 40 to 45 minutes. So we have to think like that, we have to set up a charging station over there only. So for that, the investors, the charge point operators and the landowners, we all have to come together and to set up a charging stations. Like we are giving a charging stations. If you are an investor and some Honest or Domino's, they have a land on highway. So we all to come together and invest into this infrastructure so that everyone can use that space, everyone can earn money, and the charging infra will like boom for next 2 to 5 years after that. So this is our major focus. And the second focus is for the builders also, because if you purchase a charger, so we have only one problem, that where we will charge the car. So we will tie up with the builders so that they can set up the charging station 10% or 15%. So everyone can take the chargers or they can purchase a car, because right now the main problem for the customer is why they are not purchasing electric vehicles, because there are no charging infra. So once we give the charging infra to their home or their workspace, so that will be easy for them also to take a decision to purchase a car and just run. So this is our main focus for at this point of time, to target highways, hotels, restaurants, and these other things.
Great. Thank you, Gaurav. I see that Mr. Yadav, Parveen Yadav has joined. So maybe Parveen, a quick introduction, and then I move forward with the panel discussion. Parveen, we can't hear you. There is no audio. No, we can't hear you. This can't. Okay, there's no audio from side till we come back to that. Let's move on with this same problem, but very candidly, we can ask Mr. Jain the question that how is he planning to take on the behemoths like a Tata Power on this front, wherein they are also in this segment. And what are the challenges that you face when you go for a particular location, when you try finding particular partners who can set up this on a real estate, whether that real estate is really easily available, and what is that whole timeline, cycle which you have to go through from start to end till the charging station actually becomes operational.
Sure. So first, I would like to share this fact that we are working as a OEM in both the EV space and also the charging space. So when it comes to Tata Power, so Tata Power is our potential customer, and the platform that we have built at eFill, the mobile application platform and the CMS platform, it is basically to provide to the customers or the upcoming CPOs, like Sheshuji already shared the fact that in order to have the charging infrastructure, robust charging infrastructure, we need at least 20 lakh charging stations within like next 15-20 years. And he is right on point, like these 15-20 lakh charging stations won't be operated by a handful of CPOs like Tata Power or GOPP or let's say for like XYZ, right? So we need thousands and thousands of CPOs to cater to like this 15 lakh or 20 lakh numbers. So what we are creating at eFill, we are providing the end-to-end solution to the individual CPOs. We are creating and empowering different CPOs through our hardware and the in-house developed application platform. So when it comes to the current expansion of charging network, so we installed ourselves close to like 60 charging stations, and we have covered major tourist destinations in North India. We have created this network in such a way that the fast chargers are installed at the highways, and the type 2 level 2 chargers are installed at the end destinations. So I mean, covering the highways also and covering the end destinations, wherein we have covered the destinations like Manali, Mussoorie, Nainital, Jaipur, Shimla, Amritsar. So people now can go to all those destinations using the fast chargers on the highways. They can top up their vehicle and then they can reach the end destination, wherein they can find again suitable type 2 charger where they can charge the vehicle overnight. So first, like regarding the Tata Power point, like I just cleared, like we are working as OEM and we see them as a potential customer for us. And the second part regarding the expansion, so we are expanding our arms across pan India through our franchisee partners, master franchisee and unit franchisee partners. So because in order to cater to different CPOs, we need our presence in all different geographies in India, right? And to cater to different geographies, we need our presence locally there to take care of the installation commissioning, to take care of the maintenance and service part also. So what we are doing, we have already enrolled, we have onboarded a couple of master franchisee partners for a couple of different states. And now further we are expanding our franchisee partners across geography so that we can cater to different states and we provide them end-to-end, like we provide different CPOs, the end-to-end solution, starting from hardware to the CMS platform, the application platform, and the installation commissioning, along with the after-sale service. So we will provide all these services to the customer, to the CPOs, and they just need to take care of the space, and that also we provide them with some associations with different like Park Plus is there for the parking spaces, and then No Broke Road is there for providing a space in different societies. So that's how we are creating a synergy in terms of the infrastructure also, and also empowering different individual stakeholders and making them a CPU.
Great, thanks. I would like to put this question out because that is something which we also experience as a big roadblock, is the availability of electrical infrastructure, as well as the entire process is very broken. As in, how do you get a green meter, whether there is a load sanction which is required, how much time is that load sanction going to take, plus whether there is a investment in the infrastructure like a transformer or a PU unit which needs to be put in. This itself is creating a kind of a roadblock, and what possibly could be a sustainable and a quick solution to this. I guess everyone on this panel has faced this issue. So I'm taking it out in the open and asking maybe someone or a couple of y'all can come up with certain suggestions, which maybe then Mr. Amit Bhatt can talk to Niti Aayog and get these roadblocks out of our EV infra. So maybe
I'll give my quick points on that, and then we can go around and others can add. I think this whole problem is being tackled in different ways across different states in India, where some states have clearly come up with their own EV policy, and some are still working on it or in draft mode, or I just saw today MP is going to come out with their EV policy very soon. So I think this whole landscape is evolving and emerging as we speak. But some states have come forward by, for example, Delhi, there's a single window scheme created to channelize all these applications and go through a seamless process of enabling CPOs to get to the solution faster. And say in our state here in Hyderabad, Telangana, there is a nodal agency which is acting as an enabler to work with landowners, CPOs, to make this whole process seamless. But I don't think this is the same that we are experiencing everywhere. And on ground, when we are engaging with several stakeholders, whether it is the DISCOMs or electricity departments at a ground level, there is a lot of awareness issue in terms of how to go about, because a lot of these people are receiving these applications and requests for the first time and don't know how to respond in the first place before. That's the bottleneck I think you are referring to. And the load issue is something is much bigger and amplified when it comes to DC charging than setting up a type 2 or a two-wheeler, three-wheeler charging infrastructure. And that will become much more amplified when we look at setting up bigger DC chargers. Today, the average DC charger is 25 to 30 kilowatt in India. Maybe there are 50, 60 kilowatt DC chargers here and there. I can't see, except in maybe bus recharging stations, anything over 100 kilowatts. But that is going to change very fast when we're talking about inviting Tesla into India. They are actively pursuing governments for enabling them to come to India faster. And the average DC charging infrastructure Tesla has in India, US is 250 kilowatt, which is 10 times the load that what we see commonly in India. How do we, that requires much more dedicated infra creation and power infra and integration into DC charging than the problems we are talking today. What I mean to say is these problems are going to evolve as we move forward, as the volume or density of EVs on Indian roads go up, and the variety of vehicles on EVs on Indian roads are going to spread between a car that would give 100 kilometers range to a example, a Triton launched a vehicle that is going to go about 1,000 kilometers with 200 kilowatt battery. There is no one shoe that fits all here or one solution that solves all the problems like we were discussing from the beginning. We need to look at home charging or at office charging differently. And when it comes to DC charging, we need much more enablement, whether it is from government, whether it is infra players coming forward to work closely to find solutions which doesn't exist today to be able to cater to the future needs of Indian EV users.
Thanks, Mr. Thotakura. I'll come to Mr. Mayank. He has installed 60 almost en route. So how was the experience and what all problems and how innovative did you get with your solutions here?
Yeah, so basically, I mean, one small innovative part that we did, Sheshuji rightly said, currently the charging stations are particularly of size of 25 to 30 kilowatt. So what we did, we changed the power module to 15 kilowatt. We brought it a little down. Still, it is, I mean, I would say if compared to type 2 charger kind of category, still it is faster. But what we did, because it is easier to get a spare load capacity of 15 kilowatt at a dhaba or at a hotel than to get the spare load capacity of 25 or 30 kilowatt. So that's one thing that we did smartly. We reduced further the charging rate to 15 kilowatt. Still, because for an Nexon, we consider no EV would be coming to the charging station at a zero level. That is what we expect. And normally that's how the EV users should also consider while going to a charging station, right? In rare scenarios and where they run out of charge, they don't find nearby charging station. That's the rare cases where they go to a charging station at 0%. So if let's say the charging or the SOC of an X1 vehicle is let's say at 30%, so it would take around 1 hour 15 minutes or 1 hour 30 minutes for next one at 30% SOC to get charged from 15 kilowatt charger. So that's one thing that we reduce the charging rate a little bit low on the initial phase. This way we are able to increase
Mayank, I guess we've lost you. We can't hear you. So moving on to Mr. Mandora here, do you think that there is a big timeline here which we can do? Like how can we shorten the cycle of location scouting to actually deploying and vehicles charging on that highway EV infra which you have created? What is the typical cycle right now and how can we shorten it accordingly?
Actually, we have set up a chargers of like 30 kilowatt and 60 kilowatt, 20 kilowatt of chargers. So it's difficult to take a load from the power department. So there should be a standard policy or a standard format so anyone can go and they can apply for the power and government can easily give them a power. So if you see, like I'm from Gujarat, there are so many departments, torrent, UGVCL, MGVCL, DGVCL, and everyone process is different. So once the government standardize the process that this is the form you have to fill and this is how you will get the power and this is a deposit. So it will be easy for everyone to take a power out of the sanction load. So this is a suggestion from my side, because it is very hard to take a power. We know it will take 4 to 5 months for us to take a power of only 40 kilowatts. That's why.
Thanks, Gaurav.
Thank you.
Now this comes back to Mr. Bhatt, wherein do you think an electrical infrastructure overlay and a clear mapped out system of how much load available at certain key locations, will that help, and that being available for public and for EV infra players like us, will that make a difference, or is there a more simplified solution which you think can come up?
Yeah, so I think, so at a slightly macro level, if we have to look at the charging infrastructure deployment in India, I think one is our charging infrastructure deployment will necessarily be slightly different from what is happening in the West. And I'll tell you why. So if you look at the types of vehicles which are sold in India, cars exceeding the value of 10 lakh only constitute 2% of the motor vehicles sales. So if I am going to, let us say, equate that with the Tesla-like scenario, then that's only less than even 1% of the vehicles sold, right? Which means the majority of the vehicles which are sold in India are, one, they are two-wheeler, almost 3/4 of the vehicles are sold two-wheeler. Then they are compact cars, and then they are shared transport like buses and taxis and auto rickshaws and so on and so forth. Which means that our charging requirement will have to necessarily include low-powered electric vehicles, which is very different, because that is something which is very unique to India and Southeast Asia. It's not there in Europe, it's not there in North America, and so on and so forth, right? So that's one. Second, if you also look at some of the studies which have come from the US, they're saying 80-85% of charging of the vehicles happens at work and or home places, right? And so that brings to the question of what is the role of public charging infrastructure. So I think there are a couple of things. One, apart from giving you the surety that you will never run out of charge, the public charging infrastructure also create a sense of kind of seriousness that the government is pushing towards electric vehicles. Because if you see charging infrastructure, you will realize, yes, the government is there, it is pushing, and I have to transition to EV. Now, having said that, let's look at Delhi scenario. So Delhi has about 400 odd petrol pumps. I'm not sure many people are aware that Delhi currently has about 476 public charging infrastructure pieces. And ask anyone, they will say probably 10, 20, but that's already. So I'm saying the scaling is happening, but we have to create at a much larger scale. And Delhi does not mean Delhi. Delhi means Gurgaon, Delhi means Noida, Delhi means Ghaziabad. That's the big urban continuum. So how can we have policy that is not restricted to the kind of geography of the administrative boundary of Delhi, but much a larger level? So one other example. So if you buy EV in Delhi, you will not be charged with any road tax or registration. If you buy at Gurgaon, the same vehicle, the car will cost you 1 lakh more, because the government is only giving 20%. Now, but the car will not be restricted within the administrative boundary of Delhi, right? So I think looking at the policy at a slightly regional level, developing this infrastructure at a regional level, I think that will be something which is very important, because right now what is happening is we are restricted at a kind of administrative boundary, and that is not really creating the right impetus in customers' minds for adoption of EV.
Yeah, that's very true. In fact, one of the points which I took from there is that Delhi has a very seamless kind of a policy where that is probably where we can take inspiration, maybe have other states look at it and how it's being executed. At the ground level as well, I see that it is one of the fastest growing states in EV infra play, as well as the adoption of electric vehicles. That itself gives us a little bit of a background on where this policy should go. again,
just want to add one point on that.
Yeah.
So if you look at the last quarter of 2021, Delhi's EV registration of new vehicles was almost 9% of the overall vehicles. Now that is comparable to any lighthouse EV city in the world. So look at Germany, look at North America, look at Europe. Some of the most progressive cities have 8 to 9% EV registration as new vehicle. Delhi has already achieved. The point is the rest of the country can also achieve if we are really serious about it.
Yes, and all the players here, at least in this panel, are very serious about getting it done. How about we talking about the location scouting? And that's something which is also very important for EV infra players, and it is one of the major problems which we see, that real estate in probably a Bombay or a South Bombay is really expensive, whereas compared to a highway kind of a place is really cheap. And whether a DC really needs to be urbanized or whether it's just going to be a highway play. Let me put that question out to Gaurav first. Gaurav? Okay, maybe Seshu, you can take this.
Sure, Dhiman. So I think this is a very interesting question, and all of us are going through these challenges. There is big, small player in this segment. And there is some amount of interest already coming from existing businesses out there, whether it's hospitality sector or real estate sector. The fear of missing out on that traffic of people using EVs is already visible when we talk to a shopping mall management or a restaurant management. They all are conscious about the need to deploy EV charging in their properties. So, and we cannot isolate charging infra from existing businesses and parking, because charging happens literally in the parking. So when we talk about location scouting, let's look at where all people go about and spend their time in urban locations. Yes, there is an opportunity to look at fresh land parcels if available, and if that's something the players can come together and co-build that infrastructure. But the smarter way of doing it is looking at existing urban infrastructure, whether it is shopping malls, hospitality, cafes. And these are the locations people don't mind spending their half an hour to 1 hour while charging their EVs. So how, I think, approaching these players and working with them to quickly add EV charging to their properties, whether it is on a revenue sharing basis or whether it is they want to own, run, and enjoy the revenues themselves, these models are evolving. These discussions are changing by the day. As more people are confident about the take of EVs in India, they are aggressive about investing in it themselves. But not everybody is there yet. A lot of people are very conservative about it yet, and they want the CPOs or some other players to invest and don't mind letting their parking spaces to be used on a shared basis. So that's an evolving discussion, and I'm sure all of us are going through this conversations with a lot of parties, property owners, business owners out there in Indian cities, particularly the commercialized areas where land is very scarce, and it's hard to get that real estate to set up something from scratch.
Hi. So Gaurav, if you're back, then again, you being very closely associated with this, how do you do this? How do you solve urbanization versus highway kind of use case for your own business?
Actually, we are doing the same, like we have target the audience who has a land, and we have target audience who has an investment. Then we all come together, we explain our plan, what is investor's plan and what is the landowner's plan. Then as per the mutual understanding, we are doing the things. Like some of the customers don't read land, so we can go with a revenue sharing or profit sharing. Some investors don't want to go with type 2 charger, DC charger, Bharat AC. So as per the mutual understandings of everyone, we are doing this infra.
Okay, maybe Mayank also has an opinion about this, about locations and the kind of growth you see, whether it will be urban dominated first for DC or highway.
Yeah, so see for the for the fast chargers, it would be dominated by predominantly by the highways and kind of commercial sectors, and then it would come down to the real estate or the urban or the locality wise, right? Because there are like two concerns. One you already rightly pointed out regarding the space and the cost of the infrastructure and the second regarding the electrical infrastructure also, not just the civil, but the electric also. In case of highways, we have ample space in the parking lots in all the dhabas and all the hotels, which is, kept vacant, right? Which is already available for the drive-through customers for the dhaba or hotels, right? So it is a good opportunity for those people also because that would increase their revenue stream. That see if I am a EV owner and I have to halt at a particular dhaba or a hotel during my journey across highway, so I would definitely prefer to stop by a location where I can find a fast charger, where I can top up my vehicle, right? So that is a very good point for the dhaba and hotel owners along the highways. So it is little easy for us to convince them to get a fast charger installed. But yes, again, it is quite challenging for them or for us to invest on the charges. So still the parity in terms of the unit economics is not there because the per unit electricity cost that is currently being charged for the electricity at those locations is still higher. And until this EV meters are available at all these locations, so till the time EV meters are located on all these locations, it will be difficult for the CPOs also to give a better price point to the end customer for per unit electricity of charging. Because if you compare the current trend, which is like around 20 to 25 rupees per unit for the DC chargers, so it is still not making sense in terms of the usage of the chargers. Like if you have to install a 30 kilowatt hour charger, which would cost you somewhere around 5 to 6 lakh rupees just for the hardware, and then there's on the top of that you have to invest on the civil and electrical infra. So it would make an investment of close to like 7 lakh rupees easily, 7 to 8 lakh, right? And if you have to install, you have to invest 7 to 8 lakh on the hardware or on the charging station itself, and then you charge the end customer maybe let's say 20 to 20 rupees, right? So and then the electricity cost is somewhat around 10 to 12 rupees at those locations. So there is no enough margin for you to recover your investment. So until unless the EV meters or the subsidized electricity is provided at all the locations, just like it is there in Delhi, so it will be difficult for the individual CPOs to expand the charging network. That's one point. And now recently, last month only we had a discussion with Niti Aayog. So they are coming up with a policy framework to make a single platform kind of application process, wherein everybody would be able to apply for the EV connection at anywhere across India. And that kind of policy framework is required if we have to subsidize the electricity particularly for the EVs charging stations, and that would definitely push the individual CPOs, and it will enhance the unit economics for the individual CPOs to invest in the charging space.